We have officially made it, ladies and gentlemen. It is officially NFL game day, which means it is time to start week 1 fantasy football. We've been preparing for it all week now. We've gone over the top 30 wide receivers, the top 30 running backs, the top 12 quarterbacks, the top 12 tight ends. Now today we need to go over the top 12 defenses for week 1 fantasy football, man. I cannot wait for tonight's matchup, just as a side note here. But let's get ahead and get right into the defense rankings right here. So the first tier right here, all great defenses, all great matchups right here. Starting off with number 1 with the Washington Commanders taking on the Arizona Cardinals at home. This one is very simple, guys. There is simply no better matchup this week than the Washington Commanders defense taking on the Arizona Cardinals offense. Arizona doesn't even have a clear quarterback 1. They've made 2 different changes this week on who their quarterback 1 is going to be. First, it was Clayton Tune. Then all of a sudden, we got a report yesterday that said, you know what, we're going to actually start Josh Dobbs this weekend. They have no direction this year. They are absolutely in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes this year to get that number 1 overall pick, and it starts in week 1. Washington at home, they've got a great defense. They were number 7 defense in points allowed last year. They've got all their pieces healthy right now. This is a no-brainer, super easy plug-and-play matchup here this week for the Washington Commanders defense. Same thing with number 2. When you're talking about the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Houston Texans, it's basically the same exact thing. These two are very interchangeable for me. I would not mind if you argued with me about Baltimore being in front of Washington's defense. I totally understand why you would want to put Baltimore's defense in front. They're going up against another team that's probably going to be in the top 5 of draft picks this year. Now, I think Houston is going to improve as a team overall, specifically at the back half of the season. With a rookie head coach, with a rookie quarterback, I expect this team to be more improved as the season goes on. This is not their week. They are not going to have a great week in week 1 versus Baltimore. This is going to be a very bad matchup against a defense that was number 3 in points allowed last year. Baltimore's defense is stout. They're all healthy. This is a tremendous matchup for Baltimore's defense as well. Super easy decision to start Baltimore's defense in week 1. Now moving on to number 3, the last team in our tier, it's the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Los Angeles Rams right here. Again, fantastic matchup. This team without Cooper Kupp, it is official. Cooper Kupp has been ruled out of this game. Who else do they have? They've got Cam Akers, who, by the way, is running behind a bottom 3 offensive line this year. Bottom 3. It's going to be a terrible offensive line. They've got an old Matt Stafford, and they've got a stud Aaron Donald, but that's basically it. That's basically all they have. They got Van Jefferson as the wide receiver 1. This team is going to be terrible this year, and it starts in week 1. Seattle was number 25 in points allowed last year, so they weren't exactly some stout defense. But remember, they had a young defense last year with a lot of rookies starting. A lot of those guys are coming into their second year this year on the Seattle Seahawks team with Pete Carroll. I think this defense is going to be much improved this year, and it definitely is going to start in week 1 as they're taking on a cupcake matchup against the Los Angeles Rams at home. Now moving down to our next tier right here, we've got a mix of really good matchups and also some defenses that are just really excellent as a whole, so it's hard to knock them out of the top 5, the top 6, the top 7. Starting out with Jacksonville at number 4 right here, taking on the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Now, I've discussed this matchup all week as well. I think Jacksonville gets out to an early lead, holds that lead, keeps their foot on the Indianapolis Colts' neck. Indianapolis is going to struggle this week. I actually think that they might have some upside late season, but they've got a rookie quarterback who is extremely raw as a prospect out of college. Anthony Richardson is no polished prospect. Don't let anyone fool you about that. Shane Steichen, rookie head coach as well. I actually like him. I think he will be a good coach long term, and it will be a good duo long term with Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. But this is not their week. Jacksonville is already ready to go. They're already there. They've got Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence in their second year together. The offense is going to click. The defense is going to get better and build off of being the number 12 defense in points allowed last year. So I think this matchup is just easy peasy. You plug Jacksonville's defense into your lineup. Now moving down to number 5, I've got the Dallas Cowboys defense taking on the New York Giants in New York. This is going to be an unpredictable matchup. I will definitely say that about this particular matchup right here. When you're looking at the Giants, they're a decent team. Offensively, they don't have a ton of firepower outside of Saquon Barkley and possibly Darren Waller. I mean, Darren Waller should get 8 to 9 targets or even 10 targets this week. But this is a divisional matchup, and those are always very tough to predict right here. This is a very tough to predict matchup. What we do know is Dallas's defense is elite. Everybody understands that. From top to bottom, they've got absolute playmakers everywhere. Micah Parsons at one level, Trayvon Diggs at another level. This defense is stacked with talent, man. They were the number 6 defense in points allowed last year, and they played pretty well against the New York Giants last year. Now, I do think personally that Daniel Jones will be better in year 2 with Brian Daboll. I do believe that personally, but I don't think it's going to be enough here for really Dallas to lose a step as far as being a great fantasy defense for you in week 1. And obviously weeks beyond that, they're going to be better than this, but I still think they're going to be just fine in week 1. Now moving on to number 6, I've got the Green Bay Packers taking on the Chicago Bears in week 1 in Chicago. This is a little bit of an unpredictable matchup as well. Another divisional matchup, and I expect the Chicago Bears defense to be much improved from last year. Chicago was unbelievably bad on offense last year. As great as Justin Fields was in moments and as many highlight reel plays he possessed, and as great as he was in fantasy football, this offense puttered. They could not score. They were not throwing many passing yards. I think that all changes this year with an improved Justin Fields and DJ Moore being the clear wide receiver 1. But Green Bay's defense is nothing to laugh at here. It's a tough divisional matchup. They match up well against the Chicago Bears. So I do think this will be a tough matchup for Chicago. And I do think that Green Bay will end up providing you a decent fantasy output as far as their defensive performance goes. Now moving on to number 7, I've got the San Francisco 49ers defense taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. This one is very, very simple. Earlier today, when I was doing my rankings, I'm filming on Wednesday night, San Francisco's defense was way lower than this. They were not up here at number 7. But also during that time frame, we got news that Nick Bosa has officially signed his new deal. He is now the highest paid player on defense in NFL history. Obviously, Nick Bosa is tremendous. I discussed this all week leading up to the week. If Nick Bosa doesn't play, this defense at all levels, secondary and front 7, they're all going to be affected. It's all for naught now. Nick Bosa is expected to play. They were the number 1 defense in points allowed. And while I do think that Pittsburgh is definitely going to bring a really good fight this week, and I do think their offense is going to be way more improved as opposed to what it was last year, I don't think it's their week. I think that San Francisco's defense will be a little bit too much for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I would personally feel very confident trotting out the San Francisco 49ers defense in this particular week. Now moving down to number 8, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the New England Patriots in New England. Listen, I've been saying this all week. Every single video I've made, I have made mention of this particular week. I think this is going to be a tough week for Philadelphia. I don't think it's going to be their most highest scoring week of the season. They're coming off a Super Bowl hangover. They're going on the road against a very, very tough team and a very tough defense. Now, offensively, New England's not scoring a bunch of points, right? This is going to be a situation where New England may score like 17 points, but I don't really see them scoring many more points than that. So that's why Philadelphia's defense is here. But the other thing to note here, and what I mentioned in my earlier defensive rankings video earlier in the offseason, what I mentioned was that they lost both of their starting linebackers. They lost both of their starting safeties, and they lost a very key piece on that defensive line in Javon Hargrave. This is not going to be the same defense as it was last year. They've got a lot of new faces, and they've got to take time to mesh this defense as the season goes on. I think Philly's defense is going to be fine this week. I think the matchup is going to serve them well because New England is just not going to score a lot of points. But I don't think that Philadelphia's defense is going to get as many turnovers as they did last year. Now, moving down to number 9, this is a great matchup here as well. New Orleans defense taking on the Tennessee Titans right here. New Orleans is in a good situation. They were number 9 in points allowed last year, and they're going to improve this year. New Orleans definitely has a real defense. And to put it all together, at home against the Tennessee Titans, a Tennessee Titans team that is still led by an older Ryan Tannehill, a much older Derrick Henry. This is not going to be a fantastic offense, and I think they're going to struggle this week against a very tough New Orleans defense. Now, moving on to number 10, I've got the Minnesota Vikings defense taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. This one is really simple, guys. Minnesota's defense, to put it all out there, they're not some powerhouse. Like, we're not talking about the Philadelphia Eagles defense. We're not talking about the 49ers defense. We're not talking about the Dallas Cowboys defense. This defense is not very good. I mean, they were number 30 in points allowed last year. This is not a stout defense by any means. This one is simple. It's all about the matchup. They're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at home in week 1. Brand new quarterback, Baker Mayfield, Tom Brady. Like, it's a really, really wide gap. And Tampa Bay is going to see that this year. Their entire offense is going to struggle. Mike Evans probably is not going to be as great as he has been in past years. Chris Godwin, in particular, I think is going to struggle a lot with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. They do not combine very well. Chris Godwin is a guy who gets open and he needs precision passes. Baker Mayfield is a guy who completes about 60% of his passes on a year-to-year basis. It's not going to work out well, and I think it's going to show in week 1. Even against a bad defense, I don't expect Tampa Bay to get more than 13 or 14 points this week. Now, moving down to number 11, I've got the Atlanta Falcons defense taking on the Carolina Panthers offense right here in Atlanta. So again, Atlanta's defense is nothing special. I do think they will improve off of last year. They were the number 23 defense in points allowed last year. Now, I do think that they will improve. Like I said, they made improvements at every single level defensively this year. But really the main reason that they're on this list is because of the matchup. Again, I think this is a great matchup for Atlanta this week. Rookie quarterback, rookie head coach. Bryce Young is going to struggle this week, not because he's a bad player. And I honestly do think he's the most pro-ready quarterback in the class. I've been saying that all offseason in all of my dynasty videos. I think Bryce Young is going to be the best quarterback in this class year 1. But he's got a major problem on his side. And it's that their offensive line is not good. I was really, really disheartened when I was watching Carolina's offensive line during the preseason. They could not protect Bryce Young. He was running for his life, and he was getting pounded. And this is a reality that's really, really harsh because Bryce Young's a smaller quarterback, and Atlanta's pass rush is going to improve this year. I think Atlanta has a pretty easy win this week against the Carolina Panthers, and I think they're going to really struggle this week with a rookie quarterback. Now, moving down to our last defense on the list, it's the New England Patriots taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in that matchup in New England. Again, I think New England's defense is great. Their defense is so good on every level. They made improvements to the secondary, and their pass rush is really, really stout. The team gets turnovers as well. They were a number 11 defense in points allowed last year. This defense doesn't give up much. Like I've said all week, and like I said a couple minutes ago, I think Philly will struggle this week. I don't think they're going to be putting up a ton of points this week. I think that maybe they put up 24, 27 points, but on their standards, that's actually kind of a lower week this week. So I do think that New England definitely could take advantage of some matchup issues here. I think they might get a turnover or two in this game just because of Philadelphia coming off the Super Bowl hangover. I think it's going to be a little bit of a tough week for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think New England's defense will capitalize on it. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for week 1 fantasy football before kickoff tonight. And if you were looking for the top 12 tight ends in fantasy football in week 1, click on this video right here.